My name is Sophie Maxwell, and I'm a member of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and I represent District 10, which has two of the oldest power plants in our city and possibly in California. This is not about local voters wanting more input into local energy decisions. They have a lot already and use it. This is about PG&E wanting to stop local energy decisions. PG&E has demonstrated many times that it can control local elections by spending excessive amounts of money. It is trying to do that again on a much larger scale once and for all. Energy services by public entities are about two things: local controls and revenues. We want to control our energy future. That means local jurisdictions, through their voters and elected officials, decide what they want. Maybe they want to form a CCA, or maybe they are happy with PG&E. It should be their choice, not PG&E's. Local entities have had the right to provide electric services for more than 100 years. Most have not chosen to do so. PG&E, for them, is doing just fine. It does not need to do this to protect its business. This measure will let PG&E ignore rates and customer service because its main competitor, local governments, will no longer be a threat. In San Francisco, local control means being able to replace old, dirty power plants with new resources. Local communities should be able to do that without spending 15 years pleading with and fighting with PG&E and Merit and other private entities who follow only their own short-term corporate interest. Electric service provides revenue for local government that is used to provide essential services and keep down taxes. In San Francisco, we use a lot of those local resources and revenues for other energy programs, like subsidizing solar rooftops for citizens and providing cheap power to schools, public housing, and hospitals. PG&E does not have a better use for that money. The California PUC should oppose this measure. Every independent entity that has looked at this measure opposes it, including the League of California Cities, in which I am a member, and the League of Women Voters. We ask you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. I see you have a colleague here, another supervisor for the City of San Francisco. Welcome.
Honorable Commissioners, good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm delighted to join my colleague, Supervisor Sophie Maxwell. Together, we and other members of the elected family in San Francisco.
And you want to state your name for the record?
I apologize. Supervisor Ross Mirkarimi, San Francisco. Together with other members who have now moved on to the state legislature, such as State Senator Mark Leno and Tom Amiano, have continued on their good efforts in pursuing San Francisco's right to become an energy aggregator through community choice aggregation. We took very seriously, upon the passage of Assembly Bill 117, our municipal right that enables us to become that energy aggregator, and diligently for nearly 8 years we have held consistently hearing after hearing, supported by resolutions, supported by ordinance, and supported by just simple hearings for public participation. We have counted over 100 hearings that we have held for public participation, supported by over 12 ordinances and resolutions, all directed towards the enablement and implementation leading up to the point that we are at right now in San Francisco, and that is to officially become, in your eyes, once the implementation plan is then blessed in our ability to move forward, to become an energy aggregator. Our program is called Clean Power San Francisco. We're immensely proud of this program, and we're immensely proud of the CPUC's wisdom in concert with the state legislature to give California municipalities this particular right. We have followed the law, literally, consistently followed the law as it has been prescribed, both in the legislature and by the CPUC. And constantly, every time that I feel that in our city, whether I as a citizen and now as an elected, feels that determination to certainly deliver on the right of our pursuit of our own energy interdependence, knowing very well that we would coexist with PG&E, I am still incredibly embarrassed and incredibly disappointed that in this state we would allow a private utility, a corporation, to extend, I think, its arrogance and greed to the point where they would manipulate the June ballot by a simple majority vote in order to oppose a 2/3 rule, which would embed themselves in our own state constitution. This is a complete slap in the face and is a black eye, I think, to anything that we perceive in California as our right to democratic choice. I would like to quote for you something from CPUC law of what we've asked our own city attorney, what we've asked other jurisdictions who have aspired to become public power entities and who have had decades-long track records, and those newer cities who aspire to become energy aggregators, their ability to move forward unhindered, or at least to be provided the choice so that they are not then usurped or hijacked because of the actions such as we're seeing with Prop 16 and PG&E. But what we have noticed in San Francisco, as we have noticed with our friends in Marin, who are a few months ahead of us, the Marin Energy Authority, is that it's not about just Prop 16. That's part of the Blitzkrieg strategy. What it's about is the leading up to Prop 16. We're already seeing the raining of disinformation of these glossy mailers that are landing in both commercial and residential areas throughout San Francisco. And yet I assert that this is a violation of CPUC law. For example, it is in CPUC law stating sections number 0512-041 that was passed on December 15th, 2005. Quote to CPUC, we are also aware of the particular responsibility of utilities that is imposed by section 366.2C9, which requires utility to cooperate fully with any community choice aggregators that investigate, pursue, or implement community choice aggregation programs. The failure of utility to cooperate in good faith with the CCA could cause the CCA or utility bundled customers to incur unnecessary costs or create unnecessary customer confusion. In our role to regulate the utilities that are the subject of this subsection, if we find that a utility has failed to comply with section 366.2C9 or relevant commission order, we retain the authority to impose substantial penalties on the utility and cooperate in any lawsuit that seeks material damages. CPUC law. In essence, what the PG&E is saying is that they much rather ask for forgiveness than permission. And that is why that instead of banking on their compliance with CPUC law or the respect of what the state legislature had enabled through 117, they much rather sole fund a campaign to deceive California voters so that they then will secure the deal that they get to continue, I think, with their predominant desire, and that is certainly, I think, to see unchallenged their motive, which I think is greed. Cicero, the Roman orator, said freedom is participation in power, right? Participation in power. And so I think we're in short supply of that particular participation. And I think in this country, as well as in this state, in California, with Prop 16 and in Prop 17, by the insurance company's avarice, we are now seeing, I think, this complete reversal of our ability to represent our ratepayers and citizenry with the level, I think, of democratic measurement that one would expect. I would hopefully ask that this body do everything they possibly can to not allow us to get to the point of seeing a $35 billion campaign, or whatever PG&E has revealed of what they're willing to spend of shareholder or ratepayer money, that we would intervene now and call it what it particularly is. As far as I know, and I've been in San Francisco for well over 26 years, I have to say we're still living through, as you well know, the bankruptcy of PG&E. In fact, if we could just ask any utility company here, what utility companies have declared bankruptcy in the last 10 years? Please raise your hand. Has PG&E left the room? So I am still trying to, fathom of this immense amount of subversion to the process that has now become institutionalized simply because of a sleight of hand technique that PG&E is legendary for when it comes to campaigning or when it comes to securing their profit motive. They didn't ask the voters in the 1940s when they were asked to be given a franchise in perpetuity in San Francisco. So that means PG&E has a franchise to be our sole monopoly, private utility until planet Earth dies. And they didn't go to the voters to ask for them, and they certainly didn't complain when it says it did not go subject to either a simple majority or 2/3 vote. The very fact that PG&E has to deploy, like the Chamber of Commerce or even Mayor Willie Brown, who I have a deep, deep regard for, those arguments that they pose are non sequiturs completely. For a matter of fact, it was the voters in 2001 in San Francisco that overwhelmingly passed Proposition B and Proposition H, and those were the authorization to the Board of Supervisors to deliver revenue bonding authority for solarization and renewable energy projects. This is already on the books. We already, through our own city and county constitution, since we're a consolidated city and county, have the ability of revenue bonding authority. We are required to follow a very strict public process. Our sunshine laws in San Francisco, our versions of Freedom of Information Act, are the strongest of any city in this state and probably one of the strongest in the United States. It is PG&E who's not playing fair, and to that point, it is PG&E who I think is an embarrassment to this country, because this is going to be a beachhead campaign for the rest of the nation and for other utilities who are going to see exactly what the outcome of Prop 16 is about. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Peavy, and thank you, Supervisor Mirkarimi and Supervisor Maxwell. So I should point out Supervisor Maxwell is my supervisor, so I'll be very delicate in that.
You don't have to be so delicate.
In reference, and I know President Peavy worked closely with Mayor Newsom and the Board of Supervisors on the Morant plant, as well as in Hunters Point. To some extent, the California ISO played, the independent system operator played a role in having to maintain that peaking capacity. Am I correct in that assessment? So, I mean, to some extent, and living in that community and being an inhaler of the particulates that come out of dirty power, I want to commend you and the CPUC and the ISO and the Energy Commission, everyone else that was involved in the closure of the two facilities. As a resident, I think it's very important to the city and county of San Francisco, but I did want to just make that clarification.
Thank you.
Yeah. Supervisor Mirkarimi, regarding clean power of San Francisco, is there any, we recently had just a little while ago, your city attorney representative was here. Is there any, can you explain the structure of this CCA? Is it directly under the Board of Supervisors, or is there a governing board? How would it engage, from your view, how would it engage in the marketplace in purchasing, would you just describe as clean power for the city and county of San Francisco?
It was born out of the joint efforts between LAFCO, Local Agency Formation Commission, which I'm chair here in San Francisco, and the Board of Supervisors, but the lead agencies are Public Utilities Commission. And it has been well vetted between three agencies or entities, and that is of LAFCO.
Is that the SFPUC or this
SFPUC.
Okay, good.
SFPUC. This is all San Francisco based. So out of LAFCO, the Board of Supervisors, but ultimately the PUC, because they, staff and its commission, are the governing authority for the administration of our Clean Power San Francisco program. We're the backstop in the Board of Supervisors, and LAFCO is advisory to that process. And that is exactly the role that the PUC has been playing. And they've been doing their due diligence at a cost, by the way, to our general fund and PUC budgets of several $1 million in preparation for us to enter into a CCA. So this doesn't come without a cost or a price whatsoever, and this has been in motion now for well over 6 years.
So the SFPUC acts as the governing body or tribunal over this process. Are those commissioners independent of the Board of Supervisors and the executive as well as the legislative branch of the city and county of San Francisco?
I'm afraid so.
There's some people in Sacramento that feel the same way about us. Thank you, Supervisor.
By the way, I like very much what they're doing. And they have been, and everybody's been on point between PUC, the Board of Supervisors, and LAFCO. The family's united on this. Now we're coming within a couple of months. So there's no doubt what the motivation is by PG&E. It's not just about California, it's about San Francisco and Marin, because of the skirmishes that have occurred over the last 15 years on these fights, which we have been very close on. But now we thought we found the diplomatic middle because of Assembly Bill 117, where there could be that proper coexistence, and that it would be regulated in transparency by CPUC and blessed then by all the municipal organizations. And still, PG&E manages to disrespect that construct.
Okay, well, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good afternoon, President Peavy. Thank you very much for your time today. My name is Collin Miller, and I'm the Green Assets Fellow at the Greenlining Institute. I'm here today to share Greenlining's perspective on Prop 16's impact on California's underserved, low-income, and minority communities. Currently, Greenlining is neither supporting nor opposing Prop 16. Our ultimate position will in fact depend on how both sides of the debate can answer the following two questions. First, what impact could Prop 16 have on low-income and underserved communities? Second, if Prop 16 does not pass, what impacts could CCAs have on low-income and diverse communities? To explore these two questions, I will discuss four key issues: diversity, low-income protections, rates, and community reinvestment. The first issue is that of diversity. Publicly regulated utilities have done more for diversity in California than almost any other single industry in the nation. As a result of the General Order 156, thanks to President Peavy's leadership on this issue, our state's utilities have increased their procurement from diverse suppliers from single digits to almost 20%. Small businesses, the economic bedrock of low-income communities of color, depend on this program to help achieve contracts with the investor-owned utilities. And PG&E has been a cooperative partner with Greenlining to increase its contribution to California's diverse communities. Not only has PG&E consistently made efforts to increase its supplier diversity, they have also increased the diversity of their workforce, executive leadership, and board of directors. Meanwhile, PG&E demonstrates some meaningful commitment to good corporate citizenship by contributing almost 80% of its pre-tax philanthropic dollars to organizations led by and or serving underserved communities. Given that CCAs currently have no history operating in California, they will have to demonstrate that they too can and will provide employment and business ownership opportunities benefiting local underserved communities. The second issue is that of ratepayer protection programs. California's investor-owned utilities administer a number of programs designed to protect the energy services of low-income ratepayers. But will programs such as CARE, LIEE, and LIFE be threatened by a transition to CCAs? The answer may be somewhat unclear. These programs are either mandated by the CPUC, administered by the IOUs, or provided by the state and federal governments. Given that CCAs will continue to be regulated by the CPUC, CCAs should maintain all of these low-income ratepayer protection programs. However, since CCAs have no track record in California, it is still too early to tell whether CCAs would be any better or worse. Greater clarity from the CPUC around existing low-income ratepayer protection programs for CCAs would serve all parties. It is encouraging, though, that Marin County Supervisor Charles McGlashan has said that Marin Clean Energy will not only uphold CARE standards, but exceed and improve upon them. Greenlining hopes that CCAs would improve not just CARE, but LIEE as well. As this commission is well aware, IOUs have a mixed record for CARE outreach and have produced poor results for LIEE penetration. As evidenced by this past year, PG&E in particular has had a lot of work to do to make sure its low-income ratepayers can keep the lights on. How and whether PG&E commits to improving its low-income protections will be especially important in determining where Greenlining will stand in this debate. The third issue is that of rising rates. Some have argued that CCAs could dramatically increase rates. Greenlining is skeptical about the value of this argument. Since re-regulation, IOU rates have increased consistently and precipitously. In fact, PG&E already charges some of the highest electricity rates in the nation and is now asking for $4 billion more over the next 3 years in their general rate application. Marin Clean Energy claims that it can, and in fact has mandated that it will, maintain its rates equal to or lower than PG&E. Fortunately for Marin Clean Energy, their contract with Shell, a third-party supplier, guaranteed this rate during its first 5 years. So Marin residents participating in the CCA would not shoulder the risk of any unexpectedly higher energy costs. Even if the contract is broken and CCA customers somehow see rising rates, they will be able to opt out of the program and stick with PG&E. If they do this within the first 2 months of the program's startup, there is no fee to opt out. Although we cannot yet make any definitive claims about CCAs in California, we can look to well-established CCAs in Ohio and Massachusetts. If these are any measure of what could take place here, in both cases, CCA electric rates are between 1% and 15% less than the rates charged for the local investor-owned utilities. Tape Light Compact, the first CCA in the nation, has in fact lowered its rates by 30% this year. When was the last time the PG&E or other IOUs have lowered their rates? For a California comparison, we can look at the impact of Prop 16 on SMUD. Given that Prop 16 would restrict expansion of municipal utilities, it is worth comparing SMUD and PG&E for a moment. SMUD's 600,000 customers pay rates that average 27% lower than PG&E's. SMUD's energy mix is also aiming for a whopping 23% renewables in 2010. Meanwhile, PG&E is currently getting just 14.4% of its energy from renewable sources. There are a number of explanations as to how CCAs could provide electric rates that are equal to or less than PG&E's, while increasing their percentage of renewables. First, CCAs can purchase electricity from whomever they want, as long as they meet their program requirements, whereas PG&E has more contractual limitations for power procurement. Additionally, because of their smaller load, CCAs can contract for much smaller amounts of power than PG&E. This makes CCAs more competitive, because they can enter into purchasing arrangements with a greater variety of energy providers. The second reason is that as a municipal or county-run public power authority, a CCA is by definition a not-for-profit entity, and thus can invest tax-free in their own energy generation infrastructure. Which brings me to my third point. Unlike IOUs, CCAs do not face pressures to demonstrate economic growth in the kinds of quarter-on-quarter profits demanded by shareholders. The salary of the highest paid the highest paid public servant at the Marin Energy Authority is well below $200,000, which is more than 50 times less the base salary of PG&E's highest paid executive. A fourth and final reason is financing. Governmental entities can issue revenue bonds to finance and build renewable energy generation, demand response, and energy efficiency at a much lower cost than PG&E. With revenue bonds paid off by ratepayer utility bills, local government entities have a cost of capital of about 5.5%. In comparison, based on a study commissioned by the California Energy Commission, private financing costs, such as those paid by investor-owned utilities such as PG&E, are approximately 12.9%. This huge difference in the cost of capital means that CCAs can build renewable energy generation and invest in demand reduction more cheaply than PG&E. Let me be clear. Greenlining has no ideological stance on the issue of rising rates. We recognize that with a growing population, even with some of the best energy efficiency, energy conservation, and demand response programs in the nation, California will need to continue investing in generation, distribution, and transmission in order to provide safe and reliable electricity for years to come. However, with all of PG&E's granted requests for rate increases, we have seen mixed results as to how or whether increased rates have been reinvested back into diverse and underserved communities. In some cases, such as with PG&E's photovoltaic proceeding, PG&E seems unwilling or at least unresponsive. In contrast, the community development approach to an East Bay CCA advocated by the local Clean Energy Alliance could provide one potential model as to how to achieve deep and meaningful reinvestment in low-income communities. In this proposal, an East Bay CCA would maximize opportunities for local community solar, regional wind, clean cogeneration, energy efficiency, conservation, and demand response to reduce consumption. The community development approach prioritizes local renewable energy generation, leading to both local greenhouse gas reductions and local green job creation. But at this point, the potential of CCAs remains just that, potential. CCAs will require a broad and diverse partnership to comprehensively benefit California's underserved communities. I would like to conclude my remarks by restating the two questions that are fundamental to this debate. If Prop 16 passes, what opportunity costs do low-income and underserved communities forego? Second, if Prop 16 fails, what economic risks could low-income communities face? And what protections and benefits could CCAs offer to underserved communities? It is how each side of this debate can answer these two questions that will shape Greenlining's position on this matter before elections in June. I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Simon.
Thank you, President Kennedy and Mr. Miller. I'm sure that Mr. Gamboa and Gnaze are very proud of your presentation as a Greenlining fellow. That was very good. I just have one question, in commending, as you have, President Peavy, for his leadership in the area of General Order 156. Would a community choice aggregator be prohibited, or is your legal department or council's opine on whether or not a community choice aggregator would be prohibited in pursuing the diversity procurement and other goals that we have imposed on the IOUs by way of Prop 209 or other limiting legislation? Or, excuse me, voter approved proposition.
Thank you, Commissioner Simon. I know that Greenlining's legal department would not stand for any kind of a CCA that does not adhere to the same kinds of supplier diversity goals as the other regulated utilities.
But the voters of California have made that decision. The question I have is, does a CCA fall under the decision, the vote of the people of California regarding what we once I referred to as affirmative action?
As CCAs would be regulated by the CPUC, my understanding at this point is that CCAs would adhere to the same kind of supplier diversity goals as the other regulated utilities.
Yeah, because I think if they come under state action, I like your answer.
Okay.
But if they're state action, if they come under that definition, that may actually very well be an issue, and I think that's an excellent point.
Okay. Thank you very much, and I'll make sure to bring that up with my legal department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramos.
No questions.
Okay.
Thank you all.